In the glitzy world of Hollywood, where celebrities are treated like gods and their egos are as big as their fame, there was one name that stood out above the rest: Arnold Schwarzenegger. Known for his larger-than-life persona, bulging muscles, and a career that spanned bodybuilding, blockbuster movies, and even politics, Arnold had earned his place among the legends. But tonight, at an exclusive charity gala hosted by Karoline, a famous fashion designer, something unusual happened. Something no one saw coming. The event was buzzing with energy. The room was filled with glittering chandeliers, expensive suits, dazzling dresses, and people who mattered in the entertainment industry. Everyone was sipping champagne, laughing, and exchanging stories about their latest projects or vacations. It was just another glamorous evening until Arnold found himself face-to-face with Karoline's husband, Gregor Richter. Now, Gregor wasn't your typical Hollywood type. He didn't have flashy cars, paparazzi following him around, or a social media account with millions of followers. Instead, he spent most of his time working quietly behind the scenes as an environmental scientist. His job might not sound exciting to some, but it was incredibly important. Gregor dedicated his life to finding ways to protect the planet, studying how humans could live more sustainably and reduce harm to nature. While others chased fame, Gregor worked on solutions to save the Earth. But when Arnold met Gregor, none of that mattered. To Arnold, Gregor seemed like just another regular guy, a far cry from the action heroes and powerful figures Arnold usually surrounded himself with. As they stood near the bar, chatting casually, Arnold couldn't resist making a joke. "So, what do you do?" he asked, raising an eyebrow mockingly. When Gregor replied that he was an environmental scientist, Arnold chuckled. "Oh, wow, that sounds interesting," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You must really love sitting in a lab all day while the rest of us are out changing the world." Karoline, standing nearby, felt her cheeks flush red. She knew Arnold meant no real harm. He was known for his playful teasing. But she also knew how hard Gregor worked. Her husband wasn't someone who sought attention or validation. In fact, he preferred staying away from the spotlight altogether. But hearing those words come from such a towering figure stung. Still, she forced a polite smile, hoping to move past the awkward moment. Gregor, however, didn't react the way anyone expected. Instead of getting defensive or angry, he simply smiled back. There was a calmness in his eyes, almost as if he knew something Arnold didn't. "Well," Gregor said softly, "maybe one day you'll see just how much difference quiet work can make." With that, he excused himself and walked away, leaving Arnold slightly puzzled. As the night went on, whispers spread through the crowd. Some guests defended Arnold, saying he was only joking, while others sided with Gregor, feeling sorry for him. No one realized that beneath Gregor's calm exterior, something extraordinary was brewing. For years, Gregor had been working on a secret project, one that had the potential to change the course of history. And now, thanks to Arnold's comment, he decided it was time to step out of the shadows and show the world what he was truly capable of. Back at home later that night, Karoline couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. She sat next to Gregor on their cozy couch, watching him scroll through documents on his laptop. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Gregor nodded, but there was a fire in his eyes. "I'm fine," he said. "Actually, I think this might be the push I needed. People like him don't understand what we're doing, not yet. But maybe it's time they did." Karoline tilted her head, intrigued. "What are you planning?" she asked. Gregor closed his laptop and leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Remember that breakthrough we've been working on? The carbon capture technology? What if we announced it publicly, not just to scientists or politicians, but to everyone? Let's let the world decide what real strength looks like." Karoline's eyes widened. She knew how groundbreaking Gregor's work was. If successful, it could help reverse the effects of climate change, pulling harmful gases out of the atmosphere and giving humanity a second chance. But going public meant stepping into uncharted territory. It meant facing criticism, skepticism, and possibly even ridicule. Yet looking at Gregor's determined face, Karoline knew he was ready. "All right," she said finally, squeezing his hand. "Let's do it. But first you need to confront him. Show him exactly who he underestimated." With that, Gregor drafted a formal invitation addressed directly to Arnold Schwarzenegger. It read, "Dear Mr. Schwarzenegger, you may think my work is boring, but I invite you to witness its impact firsthand. Join me at a press conference where I will unveil a discovery that could redefine strength, not just for individuals, but for our entire planet. Perhaps then you'll understand what true power looks like." He sent the letter off, knowing it would spark curiosity, and perhaps even controversy. Whatever happened next, Gregor was prepared. This wasn't just about proving a point, it was about showing the world that real strength lies not in muscles or fame, but in actions that leave a lasting legacy. Little did anyone know, this single act of courage would set off a chain reaction that would bring two very different men together and inspire millions along the way. Gregor Richter wasn't just another scientist crunching numbers in a lab. He was someone who had spent years chasing a dream that most people thought was impossible. His work was about more than just saving trees or reducing pollution. It was about giving humanity a second chance, a way to undo some of the damage we'd done to the planet. For over a decade, Gregor and his small team had been working tirelessly on a revolutionary technology aimed at pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. If successful, it could slow down global warming and give us a fighting chance against climate change. But here's the thing. Gregor didn't care about fame or recognition. While other scientists raced to publish papers or appear on TV, Gregor stayed behind the scenes focusing on the science. He believed that if the work was good enough, it would speak for itself. And now, after years of setbacks, failures, and sleepless nights, they finally had something groundbreaking to show for it. That same week, Gregor's team completed their first large-scale trial. They tested their carbon capture machine in a remote area known for high levels of atmospheric CO2. The results were nothing short of extraordinary. Within hours, the machine had removed an unprecedented amount of carbon from the air, far beyond anything anyone had achieved before. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was proof that the concept worked. This was the breakthrough Gregor had been waiting for. When Gregor shared the news with Karoline, she could see the pride in his eyes. "This changes everything," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. But Gregor hesitated. Going public meant exposing himself to scrutiny, criticism, and skepticism. People might dismiss his work as unrealistic or too expensive to implement. Worse still, big corporations and governments might try to shut him down if they felt threatened by his ideas. Still, Arnold Schwarzenegger's mocking comment lingered in Gregor's mind. It gnawed at him. Not because he cared what Arnold thought, but because it highlighted a bigger problem. Too many people dismissed environmental issues as boring or unimportant unless they came wrapped in flashy headlines or celebrity endorsements. Gregor realized that if he wanted to make a real impact, he needed to step into the spotlight, even if it made him uncomfortable. So, with Karoline's encouragement, Gregor decided to take a bold step. He planned a press conference to unveil his discovery. But this wouldn't be just any ordinary announcement. He wanted to invite Arnold personally, to force him to confront the very thing he'd mocked. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing him, and the world, that strength isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and hidden beneath the surface. The next morning, Gregor sent off the invitation to Arnold. As he hit send, he felt a mix of nerves and determination. What if Arnold ignored it? Or worse, what if he showed up and tried to belittle Gregor again? Either way, Gregor knew he had to follow through. This wasn't just about proving a point to Arnold. It was about inspiring others to take action. Over the next few days, Gregor threw himself into preparing for the press conference. He worked closely with his team to create clear, easy-to-understand visuals explaining how the carbon capture technology worked. They gathered data, charts, and videos from their recent trial to back up their claims. Gregor also rehearsed his speech dozens of times, making sure every word was precise and impactful. He wanted to leave no room for doubt when he stood in front of the audience. Karoline played a crucial role too. She helped design the presentation slides, using her expertise as a fashion designer to ensure the visuals were sleek and professional. More importantly, she acted as Gregor's emotional support system. When he doubted himself, she reminded him why he started this journey in the first place. "You're not doing this for you," she told him one night. "You're doing this for everyone who depends on us to fix things." Meanwhile, rumors began swirling about the mysterious press conference. Journalists speculated about what Gregor might reveal, especially after learning that Arnold Schwarzenegger had been invited. Some dismissed it as a publicity stunt, while others grew genuinely curious. Social media lit up with debates about whether Arnold would actually attend. Would the Hollywood legend show up to face the man he'd mocked? Or would he ignore the whole thing? Finally, the day arrived. Reporters packed into the grand hall where the event was being held. Cameras flashed, microphones were set up, and anticipation hung thick in the air. Everyone wanted to know, what exactly was Gregor Richter going to announce? And why had he challenged Arnold Schwarzenegger to be there? As Gregor took his place at the podium, he scanned the crowd. Sure enough, Arnold was seated near the front, looking slightly uneasy but intrigued. For a moment, Gregor felt a flicker of doubt. Was he ready for this? Could he handle the pressure of standing in front of so many people, including the man who had once mocked him? But then he remembered why he was here. This wasn't about him, it was about the planet, about the future. Taking a deep breath, Gregor began his presentation. He started by sharing sobering facts about climate change, how rising temperatures were causing devastating storms, droughts, and wildfires around the world. He talked about how millions of species were at risk of extinction, and how entire communities were being displaced due to rising sea levels. The room fell silent as images of melting glaciers and burning forests appeared on the screen behind him. Then, Gregor introduced his solution. Using simple language, he explained how his carbon capture technology worked. Instead of relying on complex jargon, he broke it down into terms anyone could understand. "Think of it like a giant vacuum cleaner for the sky," he said with a small smile. "It sucks harmful gases out of the atmosphere and stores them safely underground. Our goal is to clean up the mess we've made and give nature a chance to heal." The audience listened intently as Gregor walked them through the trial results. He showed graphs and videos proving how effective the machine was, emphasizing that it could scale up to tackle larger areas if given the resources. By the time he finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering, moved by what they'd just witnessed. Arnold, however, looked conflicted. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unsure how to respond. When it was time for questions, he grabbed the microphone reluctantly. "I'll admit this is impressive," he said, his tone cautious. "But these kinds of projects cost billions. Who's going to pay for all this?" Gregor didn't hesitate. Stepping forward, he locked eyes with Arnold and replied calmly, "Strength isn't about lifting weights or flexing muscles. It's about taking responsibility for ourselves, for each other, and for the planet. If we don't invest now, the cost will be far greater later. So yes, it's expensive, but isn't it worth it to protect the only home we have?" The room went silent for a beat before erupting into applause again. Arnold sank back into his seat, visibly shaken. For the first time, he realized he'd underestimated Gregor, and perhaps missed an opportunity to truly make a difference. As the press conference wrapped up, reporters swarmed Gregor, eager to learn more about his project. Meanwhile, Arnold sat quietly, watching the chaos unfold. Something about Gregor's words had struck a chord deep inside him. Maybe, just maybe, he'd misjudged the quiet man with the big idea. The press conference ended, but the ripple effects were only beginning. News outlets couldn't stop talking about Gregor's announcement. Clips of his presentation went viral online, with millions of people watching and sharing his message. Social media lit up with hashtags like "Nutrition Your Real Strength" and "Nutrition Save Our Planet." People praised Gregor for his humility, his dedication, and his boldness in standing up to someone as larger than life as Arnold Schwarzenegger. But not everyone was thrilled. Some critics dismissed Gregor's technology as impractical or too expensive. Others accused him of exaggerating its potential, claiming it was just another pie-in-the-sky idea that would never work on a global scale. And then there were those who sided with Arnold, arguing that Gregor's calm demeanor made him seem weak compared to the Hollywood star's confidence and charisma. For a few days, the debate raged on. Late-night talk show hosts joked about the showdown between the muscle man and the scientist. Memes flooded the internet poking fun at Arnold's awkward reaction during the Q&A session. Yet, amidst all the noise, something unexpected happened. People started paying attention, not just to Gregor's project, but to the bigger issue of climate change itself. Teachers used clips from the press conference in their classrooms. Politicians referenced Gregor's speech during debates. Even celebrities began speaking out about the importance of supporting innovative solutions to environmental problems. Arnold, meanwhile, found himself caught in the middle of it all. At first, he tried to brush off the criticism, telling reporters that he'd only been joking when he mocked Gregor. But the public wasn't letting him off the hook so easily. Commentators pointed out that his dismissive attitude reflected a broader cultural bias, a tendency to undervalue quiet, behind-the-scenes work in favor of flashy achievements. The more Arnold defended himself, the more backlash he received. Feeling the weight of the scrutiny, Arnold retreated to his home in Los Angeles. For the first time in years, he felt unsure of himself. He'd always prided himself on being a leader, someone who inspired others through action. But now, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd missed the mark entirely. Instead of lifting people up, he'd come across as arrogant and out of touch. It wasn't a good look for someone who had built his career on strength and resilience. One evening, as he sat alone in his living room flipping through channels, Arnold stumbled upon a replay of Gregor's presentation. Watching it again, he noticed things he hadn't before. The passion in Gregor's voice, the clarity of his vision, the way he handled tough questions with grace and patience. There was a quiet power in how Gregor carried himself, a strength that didn't need loud words or dramatic gestures to make an impact. Something inside Arnold shifted. He realized that Gregor wasn't just presenting a new invention. He was challenging the very definition of strength. In Arnold's world, strength had always been physical, lifting weights, pushing limits, conquering obstacles. But Gregor's strength came from persistence, intelligence, and a deep sense of responsibility. It was a different kind of power, one that Arnold hadn't fully appreciated until now. Determined to make amends, Arnold decided to reach out to Gregor personally. He picked up the phone and dialed Karoline's number, asking if he could meet with her husband. To his relief, she agreed, though she sounded cautious. "He's not holding any grudges," Karoline said firmly, "but I hope you're ready to listen." A few days later, Arnold arrived at a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. It was nothing like the glitzy venues he usually frequented, but it suited Gregor perfectly. Dressed in a simple blazer and jeans, Gregor greeted Arnold, warmly, extending a hand without hesitation. "Thank you for coming," he said sincerely. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me after everything." Arnold shook his head, looking genuinely remorseful. "No, I'm the one who should be thanking you. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately and, well, I owe you an apology. What I said at the gala, it was wrong. I underestimated you, and I'm sorry." Gregor studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Apology accepted," he replied. "But let's move forward. There's too much at stake to dwell on the past." Over coffee, the two men talked openly for the first time. Gregor shared more details about his project, explaining the challenges they faced and the support they needed to scale up the technology. He spoke passionately about the potential to reverse decades of environmental damage, painting a picture of a healthier, more sustainable future. Arnold listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions based on his own experiences navigating politics and fundraising. By the end of their conversation, Arnold seemed transformed. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a genuine desire to help. "You're right," he admitted. "This isn't about me or my ego. It's about making a difference. If you'll let me, I want to use my platform to amplify your message. Together we can reach people I couldn't reach alone." Gregor hesitated for a moment, weighing the offer. He knew partnering with a celebrity like Arnold could bring both opportunities and risks. Would it overshadow the science? Would it attract the wrong kind of attention? But looking into Arnold's eyes, he saw sincerity, a man willing to learn, grow, and step outside his comfort zone for the greater good. "All right," Gregor said finally. "Let's do it. But remember, this isn't about fame or glory, it's about the planet." With that agreement, an unlikely alliance was born. Over the following weeks, Arnold threw himself into promoting Gregor's project. He attended meetings with government officials, gave interviews on major news networks, and even organized a global summit to discuss climate solutions. Everywhere he went, he praised Gregor's work, calling him a true hero and a visionary. Slowly but surely, public perception began to shift. People stopped seeing Gregor as just another scientist and started recognizing him as a leader, a quiet force driving humanity toward a better future. For Gregor, the newfound attention was overwhelming at times. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and he worried that the focus might stray from the science itself. But with Arnold by his side, he learned to navigate the world of high-profile advocacy. Together, they struck a balance. Arnold handled the public-facing aspects, while Gregor stayed focused on perfecting the technology and addressing technical challenges. Their partnership also inspired others to take action. Scientists, activists, and entrepreneurs around the world reached out, eager to contribute to the cause. Schools incorporated Gregor's story into their curriculums, teaching students about the importance of perseverance and collaboration. Even big corporations, once resistant to change, started investing in sustainable practices, realizing that the tide was turning. As months passed, the duo became symbols of unity, a reminder that even the most unlikely allies could come together for a common goal. They weren't just fighting climate change. They were proving that strength comes in many forms. Whether it's the courage to stand up for what's right, the determination to solve complex problems, or the humility to admit, when you're wrong, real strength is about making a positive impact. And for Arnold, this experience marked a turning point in his life. For years, he'd defined success by external measures, muscles, money, fame. Now he understood that true fulfillment came from using his influence to uplift others. Sitting across from Gregor, planning their next steps, Arnold felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about saving the planet, it was about leaving a legacy that mattered. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. Challenges lay ahead, political hurdles, funding gaps, and resistance from powerful industries. But with each obstacle, their bond grew stronger. They had started as opponents, brought together by a clash of egos. Now they were partners, united by a shared mission to protect the Earth and inspire others to join the fight. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow through the cafe windows, Arnold raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. Gregor smiled, raising his own cup in response. Neither man said a word, but the understanding between them was clear. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won with muscles or machines. They're won with heart. The partnership between Gregor and Arnold quickly became the talk of the town, and not just in Hollywood. People everywhere were fascinated by this unlikely duo, the quiet scientist with a world-changing idea and the larger-than-life celebrity who had once mocked him, but now stood firmly by his side. Their collaboration wasn't just about science or technology. It was a story of redemption, humility, and the power of teamwork. As they worked together, their shared mission began to inspire millions. Arnold dove headfirst into promoting Gregor's carbon capture project. He used every tool at his disposal, his fame, his connections, and his charisma, to bring attention to the cause. In interviews, he spoke passionately about the importance of addressing climate change, often referring to Gregor as the real hero behind the movement. "This isn't about me," Arnold would say repeatedly. "It's about supporting someone who has dedicated his life to saving ours." At first, Gregor felt uneasy being called a hero. He wasn't used to the spotlight and worried that too much focus on him might overshadow the actual work. But Arnold reassured him. "People need faces to rally behind," he explained. "You're not just representing yourself, you're representing everyone working to protect the planet. Let them see what's possible when we come together." With Arnold's help, Gregor's project gained momentum faster than anyone expected. Governments around the world started taking notice. Environmental ministers invited Gregor to speak at international conferences, where he presented his findings to leaders who could influence policy changes. Corporations that had previously ignored sustainability initiatives suddenly expressed interest in funding Gregor's research. Even skeptics who had dismissed his ideas as impractical began asking questions, intrigued by the potential impact of his technology. One of the most memorable moments came during a global summit hosted by Arnold himself. The event brought together scientists, politicians, business leaders, and activists from all corners of the globe. It was held in a massive convention center, buzzing with energy as attendees exchanged ideas and strategies for combating climate change. At the heart of the summit was Gregor's presentation, a detailed explanation of how his carbon capture technology worked and why it mattered. As Gregor stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted into applause. This time there was no hesitation in his voice, no trace of the nervousness he'd felt during the press conference weeks earlier. He spoke confidently, using simple language to explain complex concepts. He showed videos of the machine in action, demonstrated its scalability, and outlined plans for implementation in cities and rural areas alike. When he finished, the room stood up in a standing ovation, a testament to the hope and inspiration his work had sparked. But perhaps the most powerful moment of the summit came when Arnold joined Gregor on stage. Standing side by side, the contrast between them couldn't have been clearer. One was tall, muscular, and instantly recognizable. The other was unassuming, soft-spoken, and easy to overlook. Yet, together, they embodied a perfect balance of strength and intellect, action and vision. "Let me tell you something," Arnold began, grabbing the microphone. "When I first met Gregor, I thought he was just another guy doing boring science stuff. Boy, was I wrong." The crowd chuckled, but Arnold's tone grew serious. "Gregor taught me something important. That true strength isn't about muscles or fame. It's about making a difference. And let me tell you, this man is making a difference like no one else." He turned to Gregor, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm proud to stand here with you today because you remind us all what real leadership looks like. You remind us that the future depends on people willing to think big, work hard, and never give up, even when others don't believe in them." Tears welled up in Gregor's eyes as the audience erupted into cheers again. For years he had worked, quietly, driven by a deep sense of purpose but unsure if anyone would ever truly understand the significance of his efforts. Now, standing beside Arnold, he realized that his work had touched hearts far beyond anything he'd imagined. The summit marked a turning point, not just for Gregor's project but for the broader conversation about climate change. Inspired by what they saw, several countries announced new commitments to reduce carbon emissions and invest in green technologies. Major corporations pledged billions of dollars to fund sustainable innovations. Even ordinary citizens were moved to take action, organizing local cleanup drives, planting trees, and advocating for eco-friendly policies in their communities. Back home, Gregor and Karoline celebrated the success of the summit with a quiet dinner. They sat at their kitchen table, sipping wine and reflecting on how far they'd come. "Do you remember when you sent that invitation to Arnold?" Karoline asked, smiling. "I wasn't sure what would happen, but look at us now." Gregor nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's surreal," he admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if any of this would have happened without that initial push. From him mocking me, I mean." Karoline reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Maybe not, but maybe that's the point. Sometimes the things that challenge us end up pushing us toward our greatest achievements. You didn't let his words break you. Instead, you used them to fuel your fire." Over the next few months, Gregor and Arnold continued traveling the world, spreading awareness about climate solutions and rallying support for Gregor's technology. They visited schools, speaking to students about the importance of science and innovation. They toured factories, showing workers how sustainable practices could benefit both the environment and the economy. They even spent time in remote villages, listening to locals share their struggles with droughts, floods, and deforestation. Through it all, their friendship deepened. What had started as an awkward encounter at a charity gala blossomed into a genuine bond built on mutual respect and admiration. Arnold admired Gregor's dedication and brilliance, while Gregor appreciated Arnold's willingness to learn and grow. Together, they proved that differences don't have to divide people. They can actually strengthen relationships. Of course, challenges still lay ahead. Not everyone was on board with Gregor's vision. Some critics argued that focusing on carbon capture was a distraction from tackling the root causes of climate change, such as fossil fuel consumption. Others accused Gregor and Arnold of oversimplifying a complex issue, saying their campaign glossed over the economic and political hurdles involved. There were also logistical challenges. Scaling up the technology required significant resources, and securing long-term funding remained a constant battle. But Gregor and Arnold refused to let setbacks deter them. Whenever obstacles arose, they tackled them together, drawing strength from each other. Arnold's experience navigating politics and media proved invaluable, helping them navigate bureaucratic red tape and secure key partnerships. Meanwhile, Gregor's scientific expertise ensured that their efforts stayed grounded in reality, avoiding empty promises or false hope. As they pressed forward, their message resonated with more and more people. Social media played a crucial role, amplifying their reach and connecting them with grassroots movements around the globe. Fans created fan art depicting Arnold and Gregor as modern-day superheroes, one wielding brawn, the other brains. Memes circulated showing Arnold flexing next to diagrams of Gregor's machine, with captions like, "Brains plus brawn, a better planet." Even celebrities joined the cause, lending their voices to the movement. Actors, musicians, and athletes began incorporating climate advocacy into their platforms, citing Gregor and Arnold as inspirations. The ripple effect was undeniable. What had started as a personal feud had evolved into a worldwide phenomenon. For Gregor, the journey was humbling. He never sought fame or recognition, yet he found joy in knowing that his work was inspiring others to care about the planet. Seeing children write letters thanking him for giving them hope filled him with a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. And for Arnold, it was transformative. After decades of chasing external validation through bodybuilding trophies, box office hits, and political victories, he finally understood what it meant to leave a lasting legacy. By using his influence to support a greater cause, he discovered a deeper sense of purpose. One evening, as they wrapped up a long day of meetings, Arnold looked at Gregor and smiled. "You know, I always thought strength was about lifting weights or winning fights, but watching you I realize it's so much more than that. It's about lifting humanity. That's the kind of strength I want to be remembered for." Gregor returned the smile, feeling grateful for the journey they'd shared. Little did they know, their partnership was only the beginning of something much bigger, a movement that would continue to grow and inspire generations to come. As months turned into years, the partnership between Gregor and Arnold evolved into something far greater than either of them had ever imagined. What began as a personal challenge, Gregor proving his worth to Arnold, had transformed into a global movement that united people from all walks of life. The duo's shared mission became a beacon of hope, inspiring communities, governments, and corporations to rethink their roles in protecting the planet. Arnold threw himself wholeheartedly into advocacy work, traveling tirelessly to spread awareness about climate change and promote Gregor's groundbreaking technology. He visited schools, speaking directly to students about the importance of science and innovation. "You don't have to be a superhero to make a difference," he told them during one such visit. "Look at Gregor. He's just a regular guy who refused to give up on his dream. That's what real strength looks like." The kids loved hearing Arnold's stories, especially when he joked about how clueless he'd been at first. "I thought saving the world meant punching bad guys or lifting heavy things," he said with a grin. "Turns out it's more about planting trees, cleaning rivers, and supporting smart ideas like Gregor's." His humor broke down barriers, making complex topics accessible and relatable for young minds. Meanwhile, Gregor focused on scaling up his carbon capture technology. With funding secured through Arnold's efforts and public support pouring in, They were able to build larger machines capable of removing even more CO2 from the atmosphere. These machines weren't just prototypes anymore. They were being installed in cities, forests, and industrial zones around the world. Each installation brought them closer to their goal, reversing decades of environmental damage and giving nature a chance to heal. But implementing the technology wasn't without its challenges. In some regions, local communities resisted the idea, fearing it might disrupt their livelihoods or harm traditional ways of life. Others worried about the cost, wondering if taxpayers would bear the burden. Gregor and Arnold knew they couldn't ignore these concerns. Instead, they worked hard to address them head-on. Whenever tensions arose, Gregor took the lead in engaging with skeptics. He traveled to remote villages, sitting down with farmers, fishermen, and tribal leaders to explain how the technology could benefit everyone. "This isn't about replacing what you do," he assured them. "It's about working alongside you to create a better future for your children and grandchildren." His calm demeanor and genuine empathy won over many doubters, turning opponents into allies. Arnold played a crucial role too, using his charisma and influence to smooth over political hurdles. When negotiations stalled or bureaucrats dragged their feet, Arnold stepped in, leveraging his status to push things forward. During one particularly tense meeting with government officials, he leaned back in his chair and said bluntly, "Look, I know this stuff can get complicated, but let me ask you something. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Do you want to be remembered as someone who talked about change but never acted? Or do you want to be part of something bigger than yourself?" His words struck a chord, breaking the deadlock and paving the way for progress. Over time, Arnold's no-nonsense approach earned him respect among policymakers, many of whom admitted privately that his persistence was key to moving projects forward. As the years passed, the impact of their collaboration became undeniable. Cities once choked by smog began to breathe cleaner air. Rivers polluted for generations started showing signs of recovery. Wildlife populations rebounded, and ecosystems long thought lost began to thrive again. People everywhere noticed the changes, and gratitude flowed toward Gregor and Arnold, not just for their inventions, but for reigniting a sense of collective responsibility. Their success also inspired a wave of grassroots activism. Ordinary citizens took matters into their own hands, organizing tree-planting drives, beach cleanups, and educational campaigns. Social media buzzed with hashtags like Guano Act Now and Together We Can, encouraging individuals to take small steps toward sustainability. Schools incorporated lessons about climate action into their curriculums, ensuring the next generation grew up aware of the stakes and empowered to act. Despite their achievements, Gregor and Arnold remained humble. They never sought credit for the movement they helped spark, always redirecting praise to the countless others contributing to the cause. "This isn't about us," Gregor often reminded reporters. "It's about everyone doing their part. Every person who plants a tree, recycles their trash, or speaks out against pollution is making a difference." Even so, their bond continued to deepen. Through late-night strategy sessions, long flights, and endless meetings, they learned to rely on each other completely. Arnold admired Gregor's unwavering focus and ability to stay grounded despite growing fame. For his part, Gregor valued Arnold's optimism and knack for rallying people around a common goal. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, one providing the vision, the other delivering the action. One of the most emotional milestones came when Gregor's hometown honored him with a special ceremony. The town square was filled with friends, family, and strangers eager to celebrate his contributions. As Gregor stood on stage accepting awards and listening to heartfelt speeches, Karoline watched proudly from the audience. She caught Arnold's eye and smiled, silently thanking him for helping her husband step into the spotlight. Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed, the three of them sat together under the stars. It was a rare moment of quiet reflection amidst the whirlwind of activity. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Gregor asked Arnold, chuckling softly. "You made fun of my job, and I walked away thinking maybe I should quit altogether." Arnold laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, well, Turns out mocking you was the best thing I ever did. If I hadn't, none of this would have happened." They raised their glasses in a silent toast, savoring the camaraderie they'd built. For both men, the journey had been transformative, not just professionally but personally. Gregor had discovered a confidence he never knew he possessed, while Arnold had found a deeper purpose beyond fame and fortune. Yet even as they celebrated their successes, they knew there was still much work to be done. Climate change was a massive, ongoing battle, and victories in one area didn't mean the fight was over elsewhere. New challenges constantly emerged, requiring fresh solutions and renewed determination. But Gregor and Arnold faced these obstacles with the same resilience that had carried them this far. By now, their story had become legendary, a tale of redemption, unity, and the power of unlikely partnerships. Documentaries chronicled their journey, capturing intimate moments of triumph and struggle. Books were written, analyzing the dynamics of their relationship and the lessons it offered about leadership and collaboration. Even Hollywood expressed interest in turning their lives into a film, though both men politely declined, insisting the real story belonged to the planet itself. What truly mattered to them was the lasting impact of their work. Decades later, when historians looked back on the early 21st century, they credited Gregor's carbon capture technology with playing a pivotal role in combating climate change. And they praised Arnold not just for his celebrity status, but for his willingness to evolve, to embrace humility, learn from mistakes, and dedicate himself to a greater cause. At Gregor and Karoline's 20th wedding anniversary party, held in a lush garden surrounded by loved ones, Arnold delivered a heartfelt speech. Holding up his glass, he gazed fondly at the couple before addressing the crowd. "When I first met Gregor, I thought strength was about muscles and fame, but he taught me that true strength lies in actions, not just flexing for cameras, but lifting humanity. Tonight I raise my glass to Gregor and Karoline, two people who remind us all what real courage and love look like." The room erupted in applause as Gregor and Karoline exchanged glances, their eyes shining with pride and gratitude. For Gregor, the journey had been about more than saving the planet. It had been about proving that anyone, no matter how ordinary they seemed, could make an extraordinary difference. And for Arnold, it had been about discovering that true fulfillment comes not from chasing glory, but from serving something greater than oneself. As fireworks lit up the night sky, casting vibrant colors across the gathering, Gregor leaned back in his chair, feeling content. He glanced at Arnold seated nearby and smiled. Together they had defied expectations, bridging worlds and inspiring millions. Their story was proof that even the most unlikely alliances could change the course of history, if fueled by passion, perseverance, and a shared belief in a better tomorrow. Years passed, and the legacy of Gregor's carbon capture technology only grew stronger. What had started as a quiet experiment in a small lab was now a global phenomenon, with machines operating in nearly every country. The impact was undeniable. Cities reported cleaner air, rivers flowed clearer, and wildlife began to thrive again in areas once devastated by pollution. People everywhere were starting to see tangible proof that humanity could turn the tide against climate change. But beyond the numbers and statistics, what truly mattered was the way Gregor and Arnold's partnership inspired others. Their story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges, people could come together to create real change. It wasn't just about the technology itself, it was about the message behind it. Strength comes in many forms, and true power lies in collaboration. For Gregor, life had transformed in ways he never imagined. Once content to work quietly behind the scenes, he found himself thrust into the role of a global leader. He traveled extensively, meeting with world leaders, speaking at conferences, and visiting communities where his technology was making a difference. Everywhere he went, he was greeted with gratitude and admiration. Yet, despite the accolades, Gregor remained humble. He often reminded audiences that the fight against climate change wasn't about one person or one invention. It was about collective action. "I didn't do this alone," he would say during speeches. This is the result of thousands of people working together. Scientists, engineers, activists, teachers, parents, kids. Everyone has a role to play. My job is just one piece of the puzzle. Arnold, too, had undergone a profound transformation. For decades, he had defined success through external achievements, bodybuilding titles, blockbuster movies, political victories. But now, he understood that true fulfillment came from serving others. By using his platform to amplify Gregor's message, he discovered a deeper sense of purpose. No longer was he just an entertainer or politician. He was an advocate for the planet, someone who believed in leaving the world better than he found. Yet their friendship continued to flourish, built on mutual respect and shared values. They weren't just colleagues anymore. They were brothers in arms, united by a mission greater than themselves. Whether they were brainstorming strategies over coffee or sharing laughs during long flights, their bond remained unshakable. Karoline marveled at how far they'd come since that awkward night at the charity gala. One of the most touching moments came when Gregor received an honorary doctorate from a prestigious university. As he stood on stage accepting the award, Arnold watched proudly from the audience. When it was time for Gregor to deliver his acceptance speech, he paused and turned to look directly at Arnold. "This isn't just my achievement," Gregor said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It belongs to everyone who believed in this dream, even those who doubted it at first, and especially to someone who taught me that strength isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, steady and hidden beneath the surface." He smiled warmly at Arnold, who wiped away a tear, unable to hide his pride. The crowd erupted into applause, moved by the sincerity of Gregor's words. That moment encapsulated everything their journey represented: humility, growth, and the power of second chances. As the years went on, Gregor and Arnold shifted their focus to nurturing the next generation of changemakers. They launched a foundation dedicated to funding innovative environmental projects led by young scientists and activists. Through scholarships, mentorship programs, and grants, they empowered countless individuals to pursue their ideas for a sustainable future. Many of these initiatives bore fruit, leading to new breakthroughs in renewable energy, water conservation, and sustainable agriculture. One standout project was spearheaded by a group of high school students who developed a low-cost filtration system for polluted water sources. Inspired by Gregor's work, they reached out to him for advice, and he eagerly offered guidance. With Arnold's help securing funding, the students' invention was deployed in rural villages across Africa, providing clean drinking water to thousands of families. Seeing their enthusiasm reminded Gregor and Arnold why they had started this journey in the first place: to inspire others to dream big and take action. Even as they aged, neither man showed signs of slowing down. Gregor continued refining his technology, exploring ways to make it more efficient and affordable. Meanwhile, Arnold used his charisma and connections to keep the momentum going, lobbying governments and corporations to invest in green solutions. Together, they proved that age was no barrier to making a difference. Young or old, anyone could contribute to creating a better world. Decades later, when historians reflected on the early 21st century, they highlighted Gregor Richter's innovations as pivotal in combating climate change. But they also celebrated Arnold Schwarzenegger, not for his muscles or fame, but for his evolution from a self-proclaimed icon of physical strength to a champion of intellectual and moral fortitude. Their partnership served as a blueprint for how unlikely allies could unite for a common cause, proving that differences don't have to divide us, they can actually strengthen us. At Gregor and Karoline's 50th wedding anniversary celebration, held in a serene garden surrounded by loved ones, Arnold delivered another heartfelt speech. Standing tall despite the passage of time, he raised his glass and spoke with the same passion that had driven him for years. 50 years ago, I thought strength was about lifting weights and winning fights, he said, his voice resonating with wisdom. But today I know it's about lifting humanity. Gregor taught me that true strength isn't measured by how much you can carry. It's measured by how much you give back. And Karoline, thank you for sharing your remarkable husband with the world. The room erupted in cheers as Gregor and Karoline embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Looking around at the sea of smiling faces, Gregor felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the success of his work, but for the relationships he had built along the way. He glanced at Arnold, seated nearby, and smiled knowingly. Sometimes all it takes is a single moment of clarity and a willingness to embrace change, to redefine what it means to be strong. That night, under a canopy of stars, Gregor leaned back in his chair, feeling at peace. He thought about the journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the friendships forged along the way. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Together, he and Arnold had shown the world that real strength lies not in individual achievements, but in our ability to lift each other up and work toward a brighter future. And as fireworks lit up the sky, casting vibrant colors across the gathering, Gregor knew one thing for certain: their legacy would endure, not because of the machines or the awards, but because of the hope they had ignited in millions of hearts around the globe.